This was one of the advances that decided the fate of the Iraqi army. American forces, filmed yesterday, swept along the Euphrates Valley, past the debris of Iraqi conscript units already defeated, and on to block the escape of the Republican Guard, and then to destroy it. Aircraft covered the advance, dive-bombing Iraqi positions, a mission called close air support. In this case, almost too close. An Allied vehicle is forced to retreat. But the final battles were one-sided. Here, even one of Iraq's best tanks, a T-72, was abandoned by what was supposed to be the elite of Saddam's army. They haven't all given up, though, and today the Americans reported at least 2 Iraqi attacks after the ceasefire.
There's some folks out there that are hardcore and probably will continue to fight until they can't fight any longer, and I'm sure we're going to run into instances of those. By and large, most people are ready to go home.
The Allies are hitting back when they're attacked, though today the RAF's planes were armed but grounded in case circumstances change. For the moment, though, the main task of the Allied forces is to screen the retreating Iraqi army and seize anyone suspected of having committed atrocities during the occupation. Commanders believe they know who they're looking for.
We have a pretty good feel of organizations that were tasked with carrying out some of these horrible atrocities and the destruction of facilities and things within Kuwait. We have a pretty good feel for that. Are we going to be able to get every one of these folks? I'm not quite sure.
Nor is anyone sure why the 4th largest army in the world never used its most feared weapons, its chemical shells and bombs, so expected and so prepared for. Britain's Gulf commander gives 3 reasons.
I believe that the swiftness of the attacking troops was one factor. The bad weather conditions was another factor that prevented them being used. And I dare say the breakdown in communications prevented the orders authorizing their use passing down to the gunners in the field.
That was always an Allied intention, with cruise missiles joining the attacks on Iraq's communication system, the object being to paralyze Saddam's ability to use his worst weapons, and to destroy his ability to make any more. This was the extent of the damage to a Baghdad power station. If the assessments of Allied commanders are correct, the same has been done to chemical and biological warfare plants. So, from Allied command, this is the conclusion.
It's been a great victory, and let's make no bones about it. We needn't be shy about it. We needn't be demure about it. A great victory. And if I've got one message for the people at home today, it's this. Get out there and ring your church bells, because the servicemen and women of the British contingent in the Gulf are going to be got home just as soon as we can tidy up things in the theatre and clear the battlefield.
That may take months or even years, not just clearing up the huge minefields, but also caring for the 175,000 Iraqi prisoners now in Allied custody. That's about half Iraq's occupation army, a lasting image of the outcome of what was supposed to be the mother of all battles.
Planned to say had leaked before his broadcast. Still, America held its breath as Mr. Bush announced the end of fighting.
All United States and coalition forces will suspend offensive combat operations.
Unrealistically, perhaps, the president said it wasn't a time for euphoria. Wherever there was a television set, people celebrated. In Congress this morning, there were tributes from both parties to the president and America's fighting men and women.
America's back. America's fighting men and women, from the decisive commander-in-chief to the toughest grunt, showed what they could do when given a lot of support from Congress and the people back home.
But with no news yet of Iraq's agreement to a permanent ceasefire, there were also notes of caution.
I urge Saddam Hussein to unconditionally accept all relevant United Nations resolutions and take all other steps necessary to make the ceasefire permanent and bring an end to the conflict.
The president's spokesman, Marlin Fitzwater, said that if Iraq hadn't responded within the 48 hours required, the ceasefire would hold, barring violations. Other means could be used to bring Saddam into line. Former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger says the Iraqi leader has no more bargaining chips.
he has no bargaining position left, and the road to Baghdad is open. He has no military capacity, and I'm sure he will agree to all the conditions.
The administration, too, seems convinced that Iraq is completely beaten and that it's only a matter of time before a permanent ceasefire is successfully concluded. Around now, President Bush is continuing his series of meetings this week with coalition foreign ministers. Today, it's the turn of the French to discuss what happens after that.
He removed the word defeat from his commentary.
This evening, residents of Baghdad were enjoying the prospect of a night without air raids. For the last month and a half, many of them have taken to the shelters at dusk. Tonight, instead of hurrying through the streets to get to safe places before the blackout, they strolled through the warm sunshine. This morning, gunfire had woken them. But for a change, the anti-aircraft batteries were silent. Soldiers were celebrating the end of the fighting only an hour or so after the ceasefire had been announced in Washington. Like most people here, they were heartily sick of the war. Peace, not victory, had brought them out from their barracks. But victory, according to Baghdad radio, is what the Iraqi army achieved. It said Iraq was happy to stop fighting, as it had taught its enemies bitter military and political lessons. The tone of the broadcast was defiant and unrepentant. On the streets, people we spoke to in the presence of Iraqi officials were relieved about the ceasefire and pessimistic about the future. They wondered what so much sacrifice had achieved.
I was very sorry about it. To have, this tremendous activity going to nowhere. You see what I mean?
Of course, everybody feels the same.
Heavy bombing of Baghdad had stopped only in the hour before President Bush made his announcement. By this morning, new fires had been started next to old ones. Many ordinary Iraqis, whatever their feelings about Saddam, have become convinced that the bombing had a political as well as a military purpose. They believe it was aimed at destroying their country's independence for years to come. No one here pretends it will be easy for Iraq to mend its relations with the West and with the Arab members of the coalition. To make matters worse, the bitterness many Iraqis already feel will increase if the Allies impose a punitive peace settlement.